The way I imagine it, I go back to Devil Wears Prada, and there was the scene at the Met Ball where the Anna Wintour character, someone would come and whisper in her ear who the person was she was about to talk to, and that's essentially what we're talking about putting in place. You're gonna then your best sales associates in a premium luxury space, they do that already for their best customers. But what it'll give you the opportunity to do is get more personalization. When you're not, whatever, a billionaire spending $50,000 at a single store visit.
Welcome to the Retailgentic podcast, where we explore the intersection of retail, e-commerce, and AI agents, which we call Retailgentic. Our mission is simple. We are shining a bright light on the new Agentic AI shopping megatrend, which will disrupt the trillion-dollar digital retail market. The stakes are high. Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, Perplexity, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Anthropic are all fighting to be the consumer AI shopping agent winner. There are going to be some tough decisions for online brands and retailers to make. What happens to checkout? How should payments work? Should you continue to invest in retail media networks? What does the world look like when over half of your traffic is not from humans, but from AI agents? These existential questions are the tip of the iceberg. On this podcast, we're talking to industry experts, analysts, and influencers to get answers to these questions, identify trends, and best practices. This is Retailgentic, your podcast partner in navigating our AI shopping agent future. And now here's your host, Scott Wingo.
Welcome to the Retailgentic podcast. This week, I'm excited to welcome Karl Haller to the pod. Karl is a partner at IBM Consulting and works in their Consumer Center of Competency, where he focuses on retail, CPG, and fashion verticals. Karl's been working on AI at IBM for over 9 years, and before that had 15 years of experience in the industry. In his current role, Karl is frequently meeting with the C-suite of top retail and CPG companies to discuss AI trends and strategies. So he's a great person to check in on what he's seeing and what is top of mind with retail executives today. In this discussion, Karl shares that his clients are moving from AI experimentation to workflow transformation. Karl also believes we are going to see the rise of a new category called AI native brands. Everyone remembers digitally native brands. We'll get ready for AI native brands. Well, not only are they going to be digitally native, but because they're also AI native, they're going to be hyper efficient. So they're going to be able to hit 100 million in revenues or more with 30 people or less. So that will give them some interesting advantages we'll talk about. Finally, we go over the agentic shopping inflection point and where will AI take store retail and the advent of personalized pricing. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Karl as much as I did. Karl, welcome to the Retailgentic podcast. Excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
You and I've gotten to know each other well on LinkedIn and had a couple convos, and I've really enjoyed your content on LinkedIn that you've been sharing, and we've had a couple back and forths. So I thought it would be good to get you on, and you have a broad spectrum through your position there at IBM Consulting of what's going on. But let's start back at the beginning. Give us a little biography of where you're from and where are you right now, and tell us what you do at IBM.
So I was originally a consultant back in the Internet 1.0 era. I was then working at an ad agency and at a series of retailers and fashion companies throughout most of the 2000s and probably half the 2010s. And then I've been at IBM Consulting since 2016. And it's very interesting because when I joined in late 2016 and into 2017 and 2018, we were talking to all of our clients about AI. And we were the only ones talking to our clients about AI then. And then, I'll say, gosh, around the time COVID hit, those conversations all died out. And then 2.5 years later, 2022, 2023, it's now pretty much all we're talking about again. And I think we're actually finally getting to the point where AI is not just a thing, but it's becoming a piece of everything. And that took digital and the internet a decade or so, and it's taking 2, 3 years for AI to progress through that pace. So what I do now, I lead our consumer industry center of competency. We're a global practice full of people like myself who came out of industry, and we work with clients in the retail space, the CPG space, and the fashion space, um, to transform different parts of their business with data, information, and next gen technology and capabilities.
Got it. And when people think IBM, they obviously think of the hardware company, but this is you're not out there selling ThinkPads, so I take it.
We are not. No, we have a very strong partnership with the tech side of IBM. And in fact, the tech side of IBM and the work IBM corporation has done transforming our business with AI is probably one of the biggest selling points we have right now. We went public at our investor meeting back in January, saying that we were driving about $3.5 billion of annualized run rate savings, largely due to AI and automation. And so just for perspective, we're about a $60 billion company. So that's, 650 basis points of SG&A savings, which, that opens the eyes of any COO, CFO, CEO that I'm out talking to.
Interesting. So you're dog fooding this capability internally to drive automation.
Yes, we prefer to say drinking our own champagne, but if you go dog food, that's fine.
I'm a software guy, so I recognize that has a negative connotation. Um, cool. So then, as a center of competency, are you doing mostly thought leadership kind of things and helping, or that's a definition of your vertical.
It's just the definition. What we have is we have the majority of our consulting practices live in the what we call the geos. So the U.S. has a practice, Canada has a practice, Europe, all the countries there, Asia, et cetera. And then we have small global practices that get deployed in where there are the specific level of industry depth required, industry functional or industry technical depth that is required that might not exist in the market. So even though I'm based in New York, a lot of the work I do ends up being with some of our smaller markets where they may not have as strong of either a retail practice or a CPG practice. And so we're a group that I'll say it used to be we always had to have a bag packed. Now we have to be ready for a 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. client presentation, on Teams.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then because you're living in retail, CPG, and fashion, and you talked about this wave, like when you guys had Watson, you had a lot to talk about, and then kind of it went down, and now it's come back with the evolution of the ChatGPT kind of new the GPT based AIs. As you go out and talk to clients in those buckets, what are some of the things that are top of mind with people?
It really depends on client by client. There are some clients who are thinking about what I would call, everyday productivity tools, thinking about how they upskill their, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, half a million associates. There are some people who are very focused on specific areas of the business. So maybe it's they want to see what they can do in finance, or they want to see what they can do in marketing, or in store operations, or in the whole product and merchandising space. And then some clients, and I'll say this is a big shift we've seen in the last 6 months. Um, Clients moving from, hey, I'm going to create an AI lab or an AI garage, and let's get, 50 use cases running. And let's, spin up a bunch of POCs and MVPs. And what they found is not all of those are going anywhere. So we've seen a real shift toward, um, 50 POCs to let's focus on transforming 4 key workflows that matter. So maybe if you're a CPG company, maybe that's my idea to launch my sales, my marketing, and my data and analytics. And you'll take a very strategic, consultative approach to how those would change and build out a more integrated set of capabilities to use. I'll call it, old-fashioned AI in the AI ML space, generative AI, and agentic AI in the different processes that make up kind of one of those broader workflows. And that's been a really noticeable shift among kind of the more leading edge of our clients.
Got it. So they used to be kind of throw it against the wall. Let's kind of do some experimentation. That wasn't wildly successful, but now they've identified some deeper challenges and workflows that they can go and create a lot of automation on.
Yeah, and they want to drive, top line growth. They want to drive margin, and they'd love to capture some of that similar type of, 300 to 600 basis point savings in G&A cost.
When you're doing that G&A cost, are you replacing people or augmenting people or a little bit of both?
It's both. I think it's you really have to think about what the job function is. So right now, one of the clients I'm working with, we're looking at contact center. And that's a widely known use case. A lot of people are talking about contact center, and a lot of people have moved to put virtual agents in the contact center. And what that ultimately may mean is it ultimately may mean you need fewer frontline agents, but if you're in a growth mode, what that means is you're not having to go out and hire as many frontline agents for a job that churns quite heavily. And you might actually be changing the profile of what that frontline agent is doing, because that frontline agent now is not handling, in a retail sense, I don't know, 30% of a lot of calls are Wizmo, just a where's my order, or why did I get charged for that? So as those start to get offboarded, you really need a more consultative agent that is working with a customer, and maybe that's resolving a more complex service issue, or maybe it's shifting those people in the contact center to serve customers in a place where that brand doesn't have physical presence. Maybe they don't have their own stores, maybe they don't have their own wholesale accounts that they deal with, and it's a way that you can extend and expand and augment what the contact center does. So I think, yes, there are cost savings that people can put in place by reducing headcount. However, what we would say is that might actually be taking a limited scope or a limited view of what the real opportunity is.
Cool. And then, so you've read a bunch of the content we have on Retailgentic. Um, is this kind of stuff coming up with your clients, or still a little too early to be on their radar? The idea that traffic is shifting, the organic traffic is going to be decreasing. The Gen AI answer engines are increasingly capturing consumer share, and therefore they're starting to pull the transaction up into the Gen AI layer.
Again, it really depends on which company I'm talking with and who. Um, I was on with a client this morning. He's a senior executive in a specialty retail company, and he's focused on, I say, the intersection of stores and customer engagement. Um, and he was not fully up to speed with what's happening on the kind of agentic retail, agentic commerce, AI enhanced shopping side. And so we were just talking about that, and his eyes were gigantic, and he quickly sees what the possibilities are. Um, but that's not his focus area. Now, if I was talking to the person that is, in charge of SEO at that same company, they're probably much more up to speed on that. I do think there is still a gap in what people are doing about it. I think there's a lot of experimentation, and a lot of, like, the ad dollars are probably the first things that start to shift. Um, Outside of a handful of companies, I'm hard pressed to think of ones that are either developing their own agents to shop or embracing third-party agents to come in and shop, and who are starting to think about, whether it's my site design and content and the way that is displayed for agents, or the nature of the content itself and whether it is made to be consumed by agents. There are a lot of complex discussions, and for most, it's still very early.
Do you guys have a point of view on where this is going, or that's not really how you work? You don't kind of put out thought leadership pieces. You more work one on one with clients.
So we do a bit of each. So we have I think what is now considered the top or second, number one or number two ranked thought leadership organization, which is the IBM Institute for Business Value. And I'll say the thing that, and so we put out a lot of thought leadership pieces. Lately, we've probably had a new piece every 2 or 3 weeks on how AI is going to transform X. It could be your digital product development process. It could be marketing content creation. It could be finance. It could be automation. It could be how edge compute workloads are deployed. It really ranges. We've been running a CEO study now for 25 years, and one of the things that's interesting in that is some of what I was talking to about. CEOs are seeing that the challenge of enterprise, that enterprise AI is challenging. We actually had an interesting data point on that, and it's not specifically on Agentic, so I'll come back to that in a second. A year ago, when we asked CEOs where they were with AI, 2/3 of them thought they would be beyond the pilot phase this year. Then when we went back and interviewed them this year, and this is 2,000 or 3,000 CEOs that we talked to, so it's not 3 people and their brother. 60% of them are still in the pilot phase this year. So we're seeing that the pace of deploying AI at scale is difficult for a lot of our larger clients, and we're often dealing with certainly clients largely in the hundreds of millions up to the billions, tens of billions, and even hundreds of billions. And it's not really the tech, it's much more the organizations they have in place, the embedded processes, and having to reinvent how a process works, and just the ways of working that exist that tend to slow things down and make something that could take 6 weeks take 12 months.
Yeah, and all this stuff is based on data, and just getting the data together is a huge front lift on all these projects. Yeah, and it's often these different pools, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the one, the one building block that I'll say the smart IBMers tell me that you need to have in place is you have to have the data in place. Now, and we've got a bunch of tools to do that. But if you come back to the like that intersection of retail and agentic commerce or agentic shopping, I think we're going to be in a situation not dissimilar to the mid late 90s when I was kind of first starting out, where consumers are getting ahead of the big companies that are out there. I was going back and looking at some of this data, and Forrester had a report that from 96 to 99, e-commerce grew from about $1.5 billion to about $20 billion. So whatever, 130-ish% annual growth rate over those 3 years. We're this year we're probably starting from a smaller base. I don't know if we're going to hit $1.5 billion in agentic commerce, and I don't even know exactly what that means. Is it the search volume? Do you have to actually click and buy? But the numbers I've seen are the growth is either triple digits or quadruple digits right now year over year off of a very small base. But I think we're going to hit, with all the releases out that are out just in the last out and coming out, I think we're going to hit a big tipping point this holiday. I think gift giving is ripe for letting an agent go and do some of the shopping for you. If you know, like if I knew what your three of your hobbies were, I could go search for, something that might align with that, and come back with some great options, and maybe I just go through and click to buy right on that. And that agent is just out there doing that legwork. And I think we'll get a lot of the early AI adopters, and then probably the first wave of fast followers to start. We're not going to turn all of our shopping into agentic shopping. Some of us like shopping. Many people like, we still go to stores. Stores are still, they're whatever, 80-ish% of the sales and roughly that amount of the shopping involvement. But we will see agentic, or I've been calling it AI enhanced shopping, to kind of include the search in with the agentic. And I think we're going to see, a significant tipping point this year, and then probably the bigger tipping point next holiday. And then I think in 2027, it's mainstream.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's a good timeline. The big outlier for me is we've got ChatGPT 5 that everyone, there's always people that have played with it and are amazed, so they always tease us with that. And that's as of this recording, they're saying that's coming in August, so that'll be a big one. And then, um, I think so. It leaked that ChatGPT is going to have a checkout, and it's going to be interesting to see there where these in my vernacular there's a world where they actually become marketplaces where the transaction happens on the answer engine, which is it. It's an interesting user experience. It's a better consumer experience because it all is just right there and encapsulated, and less chance for failure with an agent having to go do the checkout for you. But it creates complexity on the retailer side because now you've got this pool of inventory you've either committed or sent in some digital fashion to a number of answer engines that are going to be checking out for you. So it's going to be for me, it's a replay of marketplaces all over again. It's kind of funny to see that play out again.
I think I saw your analogy on that. I can't remember when you put it out, but I think that is a very apt analogy for how some of this plays out. And I agree with you. It offers a lot to the consumer. One of the things that, and you see this with marketplaces as well, where the rub comes is on returns. On it's the credit card payment, and who's actually getting the payment, who's capturing the information from the customer, who's your transaction actually with, and then what happens if something goes wrong, if a delivery is late, or if you have to return something. That's where I would even say a lot of retailers still have challenges on that with the marketplaces they operate today.
Yeah, maybe there'll be some ChatGPT trucks that come and pick it up, or with robots. Humanoid robots will just come grab that stuff.
We'll see how they do in the physical goods space. I think a lot of people get very surprised when they go from the digital world into the world where you've got stuff.
Yeah, it gets complicated really fast.
And that whatever the pendant thing is that they're launching, I think it will be interesting to see, how quickly we're ready for an adoption, how quickly we're ready to adopt a new device.
Yeah, it's going to be. I've had a Alexa Plus for a while, and it's actually surprisingly good with the new the LLM, the Gen AI based conversational thing. It's better at services, which is interesting. Than the e-commerce is about the same, but the services has had a significant upgrade where you can have it book reservations for you and call an Uber and that kind of stuff. That's pretty neat.
You must not have teen children in the house.
I do, yes, but they don't know we have this yet.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I was gonna say they will now.
Yeah. Thankfully they don't really watch this pod, so we're safe. When do you think for the clients that talk to you about this, do you have any recommendations for them? Are you kind of saying a wait and see, or are you do you fall into you should lean into this, or client by client kind of depends on where they are?
I really think it is somewhat client by client. I was talking with a grocery retailer a few weeks back, and the woman I was meeting with there, was all up to speed on this, super excited about it. But she's like, yeah, but it's grocery. Like it might not be the thing that we're going to embrace right away, especially given that we're still seeing, frankly, groceries where we started to see a little bit of a shift back post COVID into stores again. And I think everyone thought that we were going to kind of hold and expand on the, keep growing on the grocery e-com, and we've seen, frankly, a bit of a pullback in that. So that might not be ready. I think the a business that is dealing with um, a consumer base that are full of early adopters, then I would think you might lean into it. I also think it depends on what your legacy is, what your legacy stack is, and how easy it is. How easy it's gonna be to build that up. One of the things that we have not really seen yet, but I anticipate we will, especially as consumers adopt more quickly than large retailers and brands. I think we will see a surge of what I'm calling AI NBs, so AI native brands that are rethinking every aspect of their business AI first. So they're AI first from the shopping side and the marketing, sales, and service side, like the digital native brands were, but they're also AI first in product development and in merchandising and in sourcing and supply chain. And they might have a finance team of two at $100 million. They're gonna take a lot of those back office functions where you need to get dozens of people at that size, and be able to do it in a more automated agentic workflow manner. For whether that's finance or HR or indirect procurement or legal services. And I think that's going to give them a real cost advantage in the way the DNVBs never had.
Yeah, the most famous DNVs were like Bonobos and Casper and these kind of folks, and they also had this pattern where they all shot to 100 million, maybe 200 million, but then they flattened out because the direct to consumer piece ran out of gas when they ran out of dollars they could spend at Google and Meta. So something has to happen on the distribution side too. Even if you have a cost advantage, maybe you get to 100 million more efficiently, and you have better pricing because of that or something, a little bit more of an edge there. But at some point, there's this distribution problem in our world where we just, the consumers are locked up in a couple of places. So I'm cautiously optimistic that Gen AI creates a wedge. We've got a new set of consumers, and maybe that it creates more competition, which is always good. And maybe we'll see some of those not only use the advantage from the AI cost savings, but also they can punch into the consumer and get to a bigger scale.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens to the companies that grew in the companies that were born in the 90s and early 2000s and then grew since then, that are now kind of legacy from a tech perspective. Most of the Magnificent Seven, many of the Magnificent Seven, were founded between 95 and 2005, and kind of rode that first wave. And whether that's on the tech side, or whether that is on the actual retail and product side, I it's anytime the consumer is going to get ahead of where the industry is, it creates an opportunity to disrupt what's out there and start to go stake a claim for a share in a different way.
Yeah, let's peel the onion on that AI native brand thought experiment. Is it in my startup world? There's all this talk about a single entrepreneur, single person unicorn, right? Which is like this. And I think Sam Altman quoted that like in the next 5 years we'll have one person running a unicorn, which would be a company with $1 billion valuation, which implies $100 million kind of in a software world. But even if we take that to a brand, is it is it your each of your functional kind of things, your merchandising, your product development, you're managing a team of agents, and or is it, what do you think that looks like?
It's interesting. I was with a couple weeks ago. I was with a handful of I'll call other senior execs working in and around the fashion apparel space, um, and where we got to was it's somewhere between 20 and 30 people to have a business that's doing 100 to 200 million dollars. And that probably needed to be 75 to 100 people previously. It's especially if you're making your own goods. And not I don't actually mean producing with factories. I mean doing the design, the technical design and sourcing that. So I do think there is a like that's where that cost advantage comes into play.
It's kind of a 3 to 5x multiplier.
Yeah, and it won't be you won't get all of that because the people will need to know what they're doing. You have to it's like if all the agents were really smart interns who kind of knew their function, but you still had to manage them and they occasionally make mistakes. Um, so you kind of I always say like you need to know enough about what the output is, whether that's whether that's a prompt output or whether that's an agentic output to know when to call BS on the BS.
So these 20 to 30 people are kind of orchestration and oversight, and maybe they're, and then Gen AI is not good at the creative thing, so they're probably on the creative side as well. So the product idea, the design, and that kind of thing, and then they're super augmented by the more junior functions that are agents doing that on their behalf, executing on the design and the plan and the build and the merchandising and all that.
Yeah, and what you might have, you'd have someone like if you just take in product design, you'd probably still have someone who is in charge of um, delivering on the vision of the brand with actual products. And maybe that's one or two people, but and you would have agents that are out doing actual design work, and then you're reviewing and curating and making changes. You might have agents that are creating the, what are called the tech packs, the technical specifications around that. You might have agents looking for sourcing and production and then working, doing the negotiation back and forth on production and cost of goods, agents overseeing and monitoring that production, and then monitoring the inbound sourcing of that, reviewing, you could have an agent reviewing reviewing digital samples to make sure everything is up to spec and in alignment with what you were setting out. And then pulling that in, you probably have, again, someone on top of most of those functions that knows what they're doing, but the teams of people would be replaced with teams of agents.
Yeah, I have a small investing fund, and sometimes people in their deck they'll include an org chart that has agents in it. Now it says there's like the human side and an agent side, or they'll be interspersed with different colors and things. It's pretty strange world that we're starting to think about these digital workers, and they're on the org chart, and a lot of them have names and functions, and because they need a little bit of a job description to stay in their lane, and that helps with the prompting and all this other stuff. It's a really, if and I find when you talk to people about this that haven't thought about it, it's kind of they it's super mind blowing that this is happening.
I was with a client in Canada back in June, and we were talking about this was like to their senior executive team, and we are like, some of you will be doing reviews for agents next year. You'll be, not sitting down across the table and doing the annual review, but you have to think about what are your HR policies? How do you do a review for an agent? And is that a continuous thing? Is it a pulse thing? And then you rethink, well, gosh, how should we be doing it for people as well? And it starts to, as we were talking about kind of in the contact center, it changes the nature of how the work is done in a more significant way than just, okay, now I have an agent doing this.
How about so that's super interesting. The uh, IBM's known for whenever I go to the NRF Big Show, you guys have a huge booth there, and you obviously do a lot of that may be more on the hardware side. But how about at the store level stuff? Have you had conversations with folks that have stores where this is going to be applied? Because it seems like it'd be harder on one level but on other levels.
I'll say it's harder mostly in that there's more complexity involved because, let's say you've got 1,000 stores. Now you have to think about the workflows that are happening 1,000 times over. Like in HR, you don't usually have 1,000 HR departments, but when you have 1,000 stores, you have to think about not just the overall workflow that's happening, but the tasks that are happening in each store and how you are observing things, activity that's happening in the store, and then how you're triggering either tasks or jobs that off of those things that are happening. And maybe that's coming through computer vision, or maybe that's coming from IoT or RFID devices. It could be information from seeing how many cars are coming into the parking lot or how many people are backed up at the checkout, or a signal that a freezer is running 3 degrees high. And but then that can actually start to trigger a workflow, um, that some of that workflow might be agentic and some of it might be human. um, but the opportunity for improvements in effectiveness is gigantic, because that's probably, in terms of staff, most retailers probably run 90 to 95% of their overall employee count, works in a store or maybe in a DC, not in the corporate office. So to be able to make them more effective, you're going to deliver better service. And frankly, you're going to give customers a reason to shop the store. I don't actually think this is about cost savings. I think this is about being able to do all the things you need to do in a store to manage the product, manage the operations, actually serve customers, help them when they come in, but do that in a way that is more efficient and effective based on events that are happening rather than based on the routines and daily schedules that take place today. But that is a big area that we're working on right now.
Yeah, because anything that has a human in the process will have a human that's sick that day, and they don't get the alert. The freezer's about to break or something, or yeah, and then things go awry.
When you're dealing with in like an event orchestration or an event automation way, if someone doesn't pick up that job or that process, it'll bounce. Like, so you can take the thing we talk to a lot of retailers about is being able to take their SOP, their standard operating procedures, and how can you actually put those into code. Now the end job might still be done by a person. We're not really great at pulling things off the back room, out of a box in the back room and loading them onto the right shelf in grocery, or folding sweaters just the right way in apparel. Um, but the but if you can better organize and orchestrate and automate the work that needs to happen, you've got a lot of labor hours that you can use more productively.
Do you see? I was talking to someone recently who said they think this leads to a really interesting in-store. So the thought pattern goes: people are going to they're the more AI you use, you're going to crave some human context on the other ones. So you'll go to the store for that, and then this will empower the store. And I think they call this retailing, where the store associate will now kind of know more about you, right? Where because the AI should be able to have personalization down to the store and individual associate level. Do you think that's going to be a thing?
I think so. I think if let's assume let's assume everything is permissioned. You're in the loyalty program. You've accepted that location location management and all your push notifications and everything. So you then should be known when you walk in. And the way I imagine it, I go back to Devil Wears Prada, and there was the scene at the Met Ball where the Anna Wintour character, someone would come and whisper in her ear who the person was she was about to talk to, and that's essentially what we're talking about putting in place. You're gonna then your best sales associates in a premium luxury space, they do that already for their best customers. But what it'll give you the opportunity to do is get more personalization, when you're not, whatever, a billionaire spending $50,000 at a single store visit. For someone that came in and maybe hasn't been in 3 months, and you don't have your own sales associate, you'll be able to come in and get a personalized touch based on what they're seeing in your profile, and maybe even something about the context of your visit because they understood what you were looking at online, or that you got a something in the email or the physical mail recently, and that you had responded to an offer, and you've got 3 things in your digital cart, and 2 things on your wish list. So they can take all of that information and then think about what those next best actions are of how to best serve you in the moment of the transaction, and how to do that with a journey, but also even more importantly in the that stage in the lifespan of your relationship with that store or brand.
How about, I noticed you also seem to be thinking a lot about pricing and dynamic pricing as it relates to this. What you had an interesting thing where, I forget the name of it, but where you had like some moisturizer was like a different price for everybody. How it gets kind of insane. What will the consumer tolerate that, and where do you think that takes us? This like real time pricing mechanism that's going to be available.
I think I think the most practical thing that will happen is that there will still be listed prices. And I think most states require at least shelf listing of prices. I think 1 or 2 states might still require individual prices on items. Um, but I think the personalization that will take place will be hidden behind the scenes. So there will be, right now, a lot of places have loyalty pricing. Almost every grocer has the price that you get when you're in the loyalty club. What I believe will happen is that price you will get in the loyalty club might vary. That might not be the same 3% off on these, whatever, 50 items this week. It might be, you might be a customer they're trying to get to buy more of one type of product, so they incentivize you to do that. And if they don't need to give me that discount, they might not give me that discount. Um, I thought it was really interesting what I think I remember the article you were talking about. It was on what Delta is doing. So Delta is saying, I think they're going to have 20% of their prices will be individually driven right now, rather than, like, right now it's based off of day of week, time of day. I think something about the device, but if you and I were sitting next to each other, I don't think we would get, using a similar device in a test and control manner, I don't think we would get a different price. But that the chance of us getting a different price is going way up, just based on what they know about us, kind of quote unquote in their file. And I think that's what'll happen for, again, it'll be for loyalty club members, because truthfully, consumers have too much backlash that there's going to be surge pricing, at their grocery store or at the McDonald's, and they think like the price is going to change from the time you're in the back of the line to the front of the line. Um, and they don't realize, one, that's terribly hard to execute, and two, retailers don't want to do that. like they just don't want that headache.
Yeah, I went to a visit. I've got a kid going to school, and we went to one of the department stores, and they had all the digital tags everywhere. And I was thinking, sure is easy for them to update those prices now.
Yeah, and they
Yeah,
will, and they'll update them. What they'll be able to do is they'll be able to update them nightly, and with much more frequency, and they'll be able to update them store by store which most do not do. Most are zone priced right now, which kind of goes back to whatever back when you used to get circulars in the Sunday paper, the zone would be based on that trading area, and it was usually driven around newspaper or media, because that's where you would control what the prices are. But now you would be able to do that do that pricing at a store by store level. And if you, let's say, you've got meat that you see your normal demand is saying you're not going to sell out of the meat before it goes bad, you can actually trigger just for one store the lowering of a price. It goes back to the Kmart blue light special. You'll be able to offer people store specific local prices that are complete surprise and delight, that it's one of those reasons people love to go into the stores.
Well, I know you're busy. You've got a lot of customer proposals to get done. So I appreciate you taking time. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
The one thing that I keep coming back to is consumer behavior changes very slowly, right up into the point that it doesn't. And I think on one hand we see gradual change, and then we see this big inflection point. And having lived through kind of what happened with e-com, I think that's what we're headed to over the next, I'll say, 2 to 3 years, in the AI enhanced shopping space.
Awesome. That's a good thought to leave it on. I 100% agree. So we're aligned on that. Thanks for joining us today and sharing your thoughts. If folks in the listening or viewing audience want to learn more about your thought leadership, where's the best place for them to follow you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Karl Haller, Karl with a K, Haller. And my company has a very complex URL. It's ibm.com.
Thanks, Karl. We really appreciate you taking time, and we'll put links to that in the show notes so that people know how to follow you over on LinkedIn. But we won't put IBM in there. I think people can figure that one out.
Yeah, your spell check will never get it right.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Follow, rate, and share to stay up to date with Retailgentic, your guide to the future of AI shopping agents.